Welcome to Sports Beat KC, a sports podcast presented by the Kansas City Star. I'm Blair Kerkhoff. George Brett is the greatest Kansas City Royal. Tom Watson's one of the greatest golfers of all time, and he's a Kansas Citian. Together, they take the lead in promoting the Joe McGuff ALS Golf Classic, a fundraising event for the disorder better known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Star columnist Vahe Gregorian and I spent some time with Brett and Watson and this year's honored guest, Tony Vick, a 34-year-old gentleman from Warrensburg who served 16 years in the U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force Reserves, reaching the rank of Master Sergeant. He started suffering symptoms in 2015 and was diagnosed in 2017. It's a happy and a sad occasion, isn't it, Vahe?
It is, and I got thinking about a lot of this today, Blair. It's very emotional when we're there, and we're fortunate to be in sort of an intimate setting. Today, in fact, very intimate. It was just, on Monday, I guess it was, that we were doing that. Just the two of us and one TV reporter with Tom and George. And every year it seems like you've done it 6-7 years. I've probably done it 4 or 5 years. We get a little different feeling from them about why they're involved in it, what their relationship is, and I think we learn more about ALS each time. And it's a piercing thing, and you can feel it in every word they say about the friendships they had that got them started with this, and now the friendship they have together.
No doubt about it. We go every year, and it's Tom and George every year. First of all, I mean, what a dedication they have to this, and it's personal to them. They're not just Kansas City sports icons who are lending their names to this. There are reasons that they're involved in this particular cause. With George, his friend Keith Worthington contracted ALS. George and he were friends, passed away, I think in 1984. That's when the golf tournament started. It was started as the George Brett Celebrity Golf Tournament. Tom Watson's, of course, much more, his association with the disease, much more in the public eye. The caddy, Bruce Edwards, developed ALS and passed away in 2004.
And one of the things, Blair, a couple things to your point, you've pointed this out to me a number of times. Maybe there's something we're not thinking of, or we're just not aware of it in other cities. But think about the impact of these two, Mount Rushmore, Kansas City sports figures converging together on this cause. It's hard to believe any other city has something like that with these sort of figures on this. But also, they are by no means just lending their names. This is really meaningful to them. And every year we also have different people from the ALS Association come over to us to make sure we understand how much these guys are immersed in it.
Absolutely. Hey, let's take this time and listen to a little bit of what we heard on Monday with George Brett and Tom Watson. You asked the question, Vahe, if how much, or I guess how close were they, or what was their, describe their friendship before they got together to promote this. And I thought they had fun with the answer.
I've never asked you guys this before, but it just occurred to me. How much did you guys know each other before you got involved in ALS? Naturally, you would have come across each other on the Kansas City sporting scene, but did you know each other much before you're rolling up the sleeves in this cause?
Just a little bit, not much, but this has brought us together, George and me together. It's in a lot of different ways. I still marvel at how far he hits a golf ball.
Well, I don't know where it's going.
I remember that drive to the National on the 18th hole.
Oh yeah, when we played in that tournament.
Come on, George.
I was gonna hit a 3-wood, and there
the 3-wood. You would have knocked it right in the water.
I was gonna lay up or something, and Tom says, "Go ahead, knock it over the thing."
Hit it over there.
I hit the farthest drive of my life.
The creek, the 18th hole, in the air. 300 yards, easy.
That was years ago, though, Tom. You're saying you're almost 70, or you're 70. I'll be 66 in 9 days, so I've lost a little bit of distance. But I would play golf with Tom once in a while, not often.
Did Tom ever come take BP at
Yes, I got him out. He came out to Royal Stadium one day, and we suited him up, and he was having a tough time. I think he was hitting a sand wedge that day a lot in the cage. He didn't hit many 3-woods or drivers. There was a lot of sand wedges, barely over the shortstop's head.
Down the third base line.
Yeah, he was in full uniform. The guys had a blast out there watching him.
But I remember the first throw that I caught from this guy. He says, "Come on, let's go out and play some catch." So I got my glove, and And he goes out there from he's out there maybe 8-10 yards away, and he throws this ball and it goes whack. Oh man, that hurt. God, you don't throw it that hard, do you? Come on. Of course, I didn't catch it in the webbing. I caught it about right there, and then I paid attention playing catch with him.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, wasn't it, Vahe? That they they knew each other, but weren't buddies, really. I guess the best way to describe it, but really are now because of this.
Absolutely. And what's fun is that you can see the comfort level with kind of teasing, even taunting each other a little bit. And there's good chemistry between them. And as you said, when we got started talking about this, it was part of what made it sort of a happy and sad day. I mean, you feel the spirit, you feel a positive spirit about a horrible thing. And I don't think we got to talk about this before, but I was very struck by George saying how much he was looking forward to meeting Tony, and our ability to be out there with Tony and to tell him that George had said that was exciting.
It really was. So in addition to basically Tom Watson and George Brett holding a press conference that was, as you suggested, intimate. It really was. It was just a handful of people. You and I and television cameramen went out outside the clubhouse and met Tony Vick and his wife Karen and their family. And to be honest with you, I'm never great in these situations. To interview somebody who has been afflicted, and he was he told us his story, right? Diagnosed in 2015, not diagnosed, but first showed the signs of ALS in 2015. Diagnosed in 2017, and I was overcome with his, just his good-naturedness about it, and the fact that he just told us his story.
Yeah, and I think, forgive me if I've turned this around, but I think it's faith over fear is their motto, right?
Yeah,
and
faith over fear.
And his demeanor reflected that, and we've both had the opportunity. I think that's the right word, actually, to see the courage of people in these situations. And certainly we've seen it, and it's part of what our jobs entail a lot of times is people going through various things. But this is, to me, among the most fearsome things you could imagine in life.
And it's that way because there's no cure for this. This is, I was looking up the stats from the ALS Development Society earlier that there's a 10% chance of living for at least 10 years. So there's 90% chance you're not going to live 10 years after the first symptoms, the first signs of ALS. It's a death sentence. It is. And just to sit. You and I were sitting there talking to Tony, knowing that, and he knows it, and his family knows it, and it just seems almost inadequate to ask, well, how does this make you feel being part of this?
Well, you asked it. You actually asked it very well. You broached it with him in a way that I thought elicited a nice answer. I think you sort of gave him the cue that how do you live with this? I think that wasn't your exact words, but yeah, how do you cope? And he was there in order to represent that possibility of hope too, right? I mean, that's part of why he's being honored and part of what he's trying to convey, part of what he embodies, for lack of a better term. And I think this whole thing, is it inevitable there'll be a cure? I don't know. But they keep thinking they're inching towards it, and process of elimination, all these different things. Tom didn't get to talk that much about it today, but I have talked in the past to him. He knows the science.
Yeah.
I mean, he has spent time on the science of this. It's kind of amazing.
He was talking about the supercomputers, right?
Yeah, today he mentioned that the Watson supercomputers, right? But in the past, I've heard him go into stuff. I had to go look up everything he talked about, which happens with him a lot anyway. But yeah, that's
right. The event was originally, as I said earlier, the George Brett Celebrity Golf Tournament. And that changed in the early 2000s when Joe McGuff, the former, we got to make sure you get them all right here, sports writer, columnist, editor of the Kansas City Star, developed ALS. I think his first symptoms were in 2003, and he passed away in 2006. And at that point, the golf event was named for Joe McGuff. And Tom Watson and George Brett were their careers coincided with Joe McGuff as a columnist for the Star. So Joe wrote extensively about both Watson and Brett, and we. And both sports icons spoke to Joe McGuff to us today.
I wrote the title of the book for him, when it was diagnosed that I had hemorrhoids during the '80 World Series, and Joe was standing there, and he had that sad look on his face, like, I'm going to have to write this down. I'm so sorry, George. And all these media people are around my locker in Philadelphia after the game and during the World Series in '80. And they're looking, and all of a sudden I looked up, I see Joe's face, and Joe was just devastated to have to say anything bad, really, about anybody, because he was that type of person. And I just said, why me? Why not Joe? Why couldn't Joe McGuff have him? Why me? Why not Joe McGuff? And that was the name of his book, yeah. But he was a good friend for a lot of time. And the one thing I liked about Joe was he never went out of his way to bury a player. And I don't think in any sport, because he probably covered the Kings, he covered the Blades, he covered the Scouts, he covered the Royals, he covered Tom, he covered everything in town. And sure enough, sometimes he would write something negative about somebody, but he didn't go out there and well, put it this way, the news warranted it. Yeah. If he wrote something negative about you, you deserved it. But I always thought he was very, very fair, and what a wonderful man.
And he was very positive about Kansas City. My greatest memory of Joe was I asked Joe, teach me about the architecture of downtown Kansas City and tell me the stories about the architecture. And so for 3 hours one day, we got in the car, and we went around to all the buildings downtown and out around, and he described what these buildings were, who built them, what companies were involved. The Western Auto Building, the iconic Western Auto Building, to the Power and Light Building, to the various buildings there that made downtown Kansas City. He had a great perspective of Kansas City. Of course, being editor of the Star, there was a lot more to it, but in his desire to see Kansas City prosper and do the right things as a journalist does, to call out people in power when they're doing something wrong, to support Kansas City. When we lost the baseball team, Charlie Finley moved to Oakland, and he was instrumental in getting our baseball team back, Major League Baseball, to put a new team in Kansas City, which George began with. Couldn't hit your way out of a paper sack.
But it took a while.
It took a while, but...
From what I understand, when you were winning all those tournaments
early
in your career, you were hitting it all over the place, but you were making every putt in the world.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, well, it took time, didn't it?
I think the similarities between you and me are this, that we never gave up. We tried as hard as we possibly could to get everything out of every shot we played. Mm-hmm. Same thing with your baseball career.
Right. I never took anything for granted.
No.
Hey, it's Blair Kerkhoff, and if you're listening to this, you love Kansas City sports, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, Mizzou, KU, or K-State. And no one covers these teams like the Kansas City Star. If you currently subscribe to the paper or have a digital subscription, thank you for your support. And if you don't, here's a great offer. It's called Sports Pass, unlimited digital access to every sports story and video on kansascity.com. And it's just $30 for the first year. It's the best sports value in town, just 8 cents a day or $2.50 a month. You can't beat that. Subscribe now at kansascity.com/sportspass. So, Vahe, you didn't know Joe McGuff. You were not here when Joe was when he was working here at the Star. I actually got my first rejection letter from the Kansas City Star signed by Joe McGuff. My wife Karen had gotten a job in Kansas City, and I was okay. I'll get a job at the Star. So I wrote to the Star, and Joe wrote me the nicest note saying we don't have any openings at this time. We understand your situation. We'll strongly consider you for any position. Anyway, it's really nice. And something did open up in the next few weeks, but I was just struck by, just the politeness of the note. And so Joe's working at the Star through much of the 90s, and then he leaves and becomes, he was obviously an influential figure at the Star, but he was, for the community, for Kansas City. His role as a member of the board of directors for the Royals, he helped usher the organization through some difficult times between ownership with the Star, and he was instrumental in bridging the gap between the Kansas City A's and the Kansas City Royals. Was one of the just one of the people, along with Ernie Mell and Stuart Symington, the senator, Ernie Mell, the other former Star sports editor, who when the A's left Kansas City, made sure that Kansas City wasn't going to be without baseball for very long, and it was just 1 year. So absolutely iconic figure. We're talking about sports icon, Joe McGuff, that way in our world, in the journalism world, and just a very important person, I think, in the history of Kansas City.
I wish I'd had the privilege. I at every turn, since I've been here 6.5 years, I knew about Joe long before I came here, but I just wish I'd gotten to know him, and I'm glad you did.
And I don't. Besides Joe, I'm not sure that I've had experience, and the people that I meet at this event, people who have been afflicted with ALS. But you do.
I do, and I'll tell you this. Before this happened, I really didn't understand it at all. I certainly had no appreciation of what it really meant, and I'll try to condense this. But it was an important moment in my life. A friend that I'd known quite well many years before. I hadn't been in touch with her for some years, but one day I got an email from her, and in the email she makes reference to the eye gaze machine she's using, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but she lets on that she has ALS and that she would like me to come visit. She has a project she wants me to work on, which she wanted me to thinking I'm a sports writer that I'd be able to make a movie. She wanted me to do something on Lou Gehrig. Well, this reflects her spirit, and long story short, I went to visit her in New Jersey some months later. I was not at all prepared for what I was going to see. We went to a restaurant that her family had become close with the proprietor with, and she's wheeled in on a gurney. She's flat on the bed, and she can't talk, and she's got this eye machine in front of her, and she's talking to me by blinking her eyes at this machine. And she was a very dynamic person, very beautiful, and just a shell of herself in this, and yet her spirit was entirely intact. And she had 4 young boys, and her whole goal was to do everything experimental she could do, everything she could do, knowing it was not going to save her, but that it might help other people be saved. So I would urge anybody that is listening this far, and if you find something moving and hearing about her, look up. Her name's Pam Callahan, Callahan, and Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda was doing a play on Broadway about ALS victim. I can't remember the name of the play, but came across Pam and wrote a lovely blog post about her and had pictures and talked about Pam's spirit. And I'm not doing justice to Pam's spirit, but she was a wonderful person, and that will always stick with me.
Oh, I bet. I mean, I guess that's what Tom Watson meant when he said "this damn disease."
Yeah,
that's the image, isn't it?
Yeah, you just can't believe what you've seen happen to somebody, and so hopefully most of our listeners have not had one direct experience with it, but at the same time, I hope that in some way they become acquainted with it to understand what it really means, and perhaps can lend their own support to it, to be honest.
Well, let's end this by again saluting George Brett and Tom Watson for the work that they do here. And we talk to them every year, as we've said a few times, but their determination and resolve to make this fundraiser the best that it can be, to raise as much money as they possibly can raise for research, to find a cure for this. I'm struck by that. I hear it every year, and I'm struck by it every single year.
Well, as am I, and I feel like we I don't even think we'd rehash. I think we feel struck anew and struck in different ways each year. And I'm grateful for what they do. I mean, I think it's fantastic. It's a great reminder that the difference somebody can make just by really caring about something.
Well, that'll do it for today. Links to the stories we discussed can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Thanks for listening to Sports Beat KC. I'm Blair Kerkhoff, and we'll talk sports again soon.